another day. We ask forgiveness for our sins, for which we lay our regrets and sorrows. Thank you for your overflowing and unending patience, kindness, and love that you shower us every day of our lives. Today, as we gather for this special event, we humbly seek your divine providence to help us share your grace to others. Help us engage in meaningful discussions by giving us wisdom, understanding, and guidance. Help us learn and grow and love one another so that we can become better children of yours. Amen.
Game start! 아파트 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 kissy face sent to your phone but I'm trying to kiss your lips for real red hearts that's what I'm on yeah come give me something I can feel don't you want me like I want you baby don't you need me like I need you now sleep tomorrow but tonight go crazy all you gotta do is just meet me at the 아파트 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 Hey, so now you know the game. Are you ready? Cause I'm coming to get you, get you, get you. Hold on, I'm on my way. Yeah, 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 yeah. I'm on my way. 아파트 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 아파트
Have you ever wondered how countries work together or deal with each other across the world? So the global interstate system is how countries connect through trades, agreements, and dealing with global problems. Just like roads link cities in one country, countries around the world are connected in different ways. As the world gets more connected and faces new challenges, it is important to know how this system works. So in this chapter, we look at how countries interact, how this system started, and what influences it today. Before we proceed, I would like first to introduce the team, starting with Rembrandt Tatalcorin, who was responsible for editing this video, while Edelberto Taer focused on making the handouts, and I myself am the one who made this PowerPoint presentation. So together, we collaborated on this project, combining our efforts and strengths to deliver a comprehensive discussion.
Our topic for today is about the global interstate system. But before that, we have to identify what a state is. So a state is basically a form of human association distinguished from other social groups by its purpose, the establishment of order and security, its methods, the laws and their enforcement, its territories, the area of jurisdiction or geographic boundaries, and finally by its sovereignty. They are what we commonly call countries. Now that we know what the state is, we have now to identify what the global interstate system is. So the global interstate system is a system of competing and allied states around the world that interact in important ways. It is characterized by states governing themselves independently while also interacting diplomatically and through international organizations. The system divides the world into core nations that dominate economically, periphery nations that are dependent on core nations, and semi-periphery nations that share both traits. This division of labor and influence within the global system is analyzed through the framework of world system theory. Alright? In simple terms, it is the whole system of human interaction structured politically as competing and allying state, which is the focus of international relations. So these groups includes the multinational corporations and the global civil society organizations. So under multinational corporations includes the Google, Coca-Cola, Apple, ExxonMobil, Microsoft, in which they operate in many countries. Additionally, in the global civil society organization, that includes the Red Cross, Amnesty International, Greenpeace, and the International Labor Organization, in which they work on worldwide issues. Right. Alright, now that we know what is a global interstate system and its function, let us now proceed on learning what global governance is in the 21st century. My friend, I assure you that this topic is going to be interesting. Alright, so global governance refers to the cooperative management and regulation of global issues and challenges through global governance. Is the way countries, organizations, and other groups work together to solve big problems that affect the whole world, like climate change, poverty, or disease. Instead of each country acting alone, they cooperate together through international institutions like United Nations, agreements like the climate deals, and norms, atong ginabuhat, shared rules or standard to find solutions. So global governance help us manage issues to go beyond one country's border and require everyone to work together. National institution agreements and norms often involving multiple countries, organizations, and actors to address problems that transcend national borders. In summary, global governance is about countries and organizations cooperating to tackle worldwide problems that go beyond national borders using international agreements, institutions, and shared rules to find solutions. But besides that, the emergence of global governance is driven by several key factors. Number one, the declining power of nation-state as nation-states became less stable or effective. The need for global governance rises to fill the resulting void. For example, when that particular nation, state, or country is in crisis and they can't handle it on their own, global governance acts and help them out. That's the role of global governance. Number two, the transnational flows. The rapid flow of digital information, goods, and people across borders challenges nation-states' ability to control these movements. Effort to restrict such flow, like China's internet censorship, often face backlash. For example, the internet allows information to spread worldwide, but countries like China try to censor it, facing resistance from citizens and criticism globally. Similarly, global trade and migration pose challenges, and as governments try to manage tariffs or immigration, often facing political backlash. While governments try to control these flows, their efforts often lead to economic and social tensions. Dili man kasi nabot. And number three, mass migration and criminal activity. The inability of state to control migration and combat transnational crimes. For example, drugs, human trafficking, etc. increases the demand for global governance to manage these issues and maintain orders. Those problems kay naa na gina sa ato ang kanang country, dili sa atong country but around the world, and dili nato makayo nga kita-kita ra to make ka nang masulban na siya nga problema ba. So yeah, we need global cooperation para malesen. And number 4, last but not the least, global problems beyond state capacity. Issues like global financial crisis require international cooperation as individual nation, especially to those in global south whom cannot address these challenges alone. Global problems like financial crisis are too big for any one country to solve on its own. These issues often affect many nations, especially poorer countries in the global south, which don't have the resources to fix them by themselves. To tackle problems like economic downturns, climate change, or pandemic, countries need to work together through international cooperation. And no single country can manage these challenges alone because they are connected across borders and require shared solutions. And now let's proceed to the effects of globalization to government. So one key aspect of the state sovereignty in the government is that it is a group of people whom have the ultimate authority to act on behalf of a state. Each state has its own right to self-determination and that other countries should not intervene in the affairs of the state unless there are extraordinary reasons to do so. Other countries must recognize sovereignty or the right to govern one's own territorial borders. Each state is autonomous unto itself and responsible within its own system of government to those who are governed. So government are responsible for resolving conflicts, making decisions, and implementing policies, often through elections in democratic states. Civil society, including private institutions like business and non-profits, can act as counterbalance to the government. In short, state sovereignty means a country has to make its own rules and decisions without other countries getting involved. The government has the power to manage the country's affairs. However, this power is challenged by things like identity movements, where groups within the country want more right or independence. The global economics, where outside economic pressure can limit a country's control, and global social movements, where worldwide groups push for changes in things like human rights or the environment. These challenges can make it harder for a country to govern itself. There have been several challenges to government and ultimately to state autonomy. And we can divide these challenges into 4. Number 1 is tradition, 2 is challenges from national or identity movements, 3 is global economics, and 4 is global social movements. First, let's tackle about the traditional challenges. So, number 1, in external intervention. It typically involves foreign countries interfering in a state sovereignty, often through military action. A historical example of this is in Iraq in 1990 invasion of Kuwait, which led to intervention by an international coalition. And a more recent example is Russia's intervention in Ukraine in 2014. Russia took control of Crimea, a part of Ukraine, and supported local group who wanted to join the Russia. This was seen as a violation of Ukraine's sovereignty, as Crimea was internationally recognized as part of Ukraine. Despite global condemnation, the Russia continued to support Crimea's separation and its desire to join Russia, challenging Ukraine's control over its own territory. And second example of traditional challenge is the internal political challenges. This can also threaten the state autonomy. Example, after Egypt's Arab Spring, a military coup ousted a newly elected government that was seen as too fundamentalist. Similarly, the Taliban's control over Afghanistan a military coup removed the newly elected Islamist government, leading to military rule in Afghanistan. The Taliban regained control in 2021 after years of conflict undermining the country's stability. So, if you're not familiar who unsa ang Taliban, you can watch the documentary ana dato ni kisa ba to si Kapuso mo Jessica Soho. Naa siya documentary ana. And third, the regional organization. So, can challenge country sovereignty by getting involved in its issue, especially during crisis. For example, the UN intervened in Sudan in 2003 due to civil war and humanitarian crisis, sending peacekeepers to help, which limited Sudan's control over the situation. Similarly, during the Greece debt crisis in 2009, the EU and IMF gave Greece financial help but required the country to follow strict rules, reducing its ability to make independent economic decisions. This example shows how outside organizations can influence or even control some aspects of a country's government, affecting its sovereignty. Alright, let's now proceed to the challenges from national identity movements. Okay, before we dig deeper, let's differentiate nation to state. So, nation versus state. A nation has a cultural identity, such as language, religion, or traditions, while a state refers to the political entity with defined geographical borders and a governing body. Cultural identity across states. People with the same cultural identity can live across multiple states. For example, the Kurds, an ethnic group with their own distinct language, culture, and history. They primarily live in the region known as Turkey, as Kurdistan. They usually live in Iran, Iraq, and Turkey. Next is the Catalans, an ethnic group with their own language, cultures, and history, primarily centered in the Catalonia region of northern Spain, primarily in Spain but also in France. The Scottish nationalism. Scotland considered independence in 2014 but now has more autonomy. They have a distinct culture, language with Gaelic and Scots, and history, and many Scots feel strong sense of identity separate from the rest of the United Kingdom. And next is the global identity movements. So groups like Al-Qaeda and ISIS representing movements structured and around fundamentalist interpretation of Islam, challenging traditional state boundaries. These examples show how cultural identity and nationalism can transcend state boundaries, leading to both regional autonomy movement and global ideological movement. Alright, and for the last part of my reporting, we're going to tackle about the global economics. So it presents a challenge to state sovereignty as countries must adhere to the rules of free market capitalism. Organizations like the World Trade Organization, the NAFTA, EU, and ASEAN encourage economic cooperation and austerity measures. Neoliberal economics emerging in the 1980s promotes free trade deregulation and minimal government intervention, requiring states to prioritize global market integration over protecting domestic interest. This economic model is seen as a threat to state sovereignty as governments lose control over their economic policies. The IMF and World Bank impose reforms on poorer nations, often pushing for privatization and austerity. Developed countries also set up factors in developing nations, exacerbating global inequality. Neoliberal economic, which started in the 1980s, pushes countries to follow rules that prioritize free trade and global markets over protecting their own local economies. Organizations like the World Trade Organization, NAFTA, EU, and ASEAN encourage countries to work together economically, often enforcing austerity measures, cutting government spending. This means that government have less control over their own economic policies and must focus on fitting into the global market. An example of this is Greece after joining the EU in 1981 and adopting the euro in 2001. Greece faced rising debt, worsening in the 2008 financial crisis. Unable to meet its debt obligation, Greece received an IMF bailout in exchange for austerity measures, highlighting how economic crisis forced governments to comply with global financial pressures. And I will now give the table to the next presenter.
The relevance of the state and globalization. A state is a political entity with a permanent population, defined territory, government, and sovereignty, which facilitates governance and international relations. In contrast, a nation is a cultural community united by shared identity and values. Nation states ideally merge these aspects, though some, like the Philippines, consist of diverse ethnic groups. Despite globalization, nation states remain central in global affairs, dealing with issues like economic shifts, terrorism, immigration, and health crises. While some argue that globalization's effects on nation states are exaggerated, others see it as an opportunity for reform and adaptation. Overall, globalization challenges nation states but also offers opportunities, ensuring their continued significance in global politics. So, a state is a political entity with a population, with a territory, a government, and sovereignty. So, it has its own power. While a nation is a cultural community with shared identity and values. So, despite globalization, nation states remain key in addressing issues like economics, like in terrorism, health. So, it offers both challenges and opportunities for adaptation in global politics. The relevance of the state amid globalization can be understood through several aspects. First, sovereignty. States maintain authority over their territory and governance despite global interdependence. So, despite global interdependence, states maintain control over their territory and governance. They retain sovereignty, making decisions based on national interest, even amidst international influence and cooperation. Second, regulation and standards. Governments set laws and regulations to manage economic activities, public health, and environment protection. So governments create laws and regulations to oversee and guide economic activities, ensure public health, and protect the environment, aiming to promote stability, safety, and sustainable development within society. So the third is social safety nets. National governments provide social services to address inequalities exacerbated by globalization. So national governments offer social services like healthcare, education, and welfare to reduce inequalities worsened by the globalization. So this helps to support vulnerable populations and promote social equity. So the fourth one is cultural identity. States preserve local traditions and cultural values in the face of global influences. So states protect local traditions and cultural values to maintain national identity and resist cultural homogenization brought by global influences. So number five, states are responsible for national security, addressing threats like terrorism and cybercrime. So states are responsible for ensuring national security by tackling threats such as terrorism and cybercrime. So this allows for a protection for the citizens and maintaining stability. Number 6, economic policy. Governments shape policies to protect local industries and respond to local economic changes. So, governments create policies to support local industries and adapt to global economic shifts, aiming to safeguard jobs, boost growth, and maintain economic stability. Number 7, global governance participation. States play key roles in international organizations and treaties shaping global norms. So states influence global norms by actively participating in international organizations and treaties. So this helps to shape global policies and standards on issues like trade, security, and human rights. Number 8, adaptation and resilience. States must adapt to global changes, ensuring resilience in the face of the challenges like climate change. So states must adapt to global changes, such as climate change, by developing policies and strategies that build resilience and mitigate potential risks to their environments and economies. So in summary, while globalization fosters interconnectedness, the state remains a fundamental actor in managing relationships, protecting interests, and addressing challenges at both national and global levels. Next, institutions that govern international relations. International relations are shaped and governed by a variety of institutions, both governmental and non-governmental, that facilitate cooperation, conflict resolution, and global governance. These institutions provide a framework for states to manage relations with each other and address global challenges such as security, trade, human rights, and development. These include intergovernmental organizations like the United Nations or UN, International Court of Justice, the ICJ, the NAFTA, and NATO, as well as non-governmental organizations that promote social and economic development worldwide. So international relations are guided by various institutions, both the governmental like UN and the NATO, and non-governmental organizations, which help manage cooperation, resolve conflict, and address global issues like security, like trade, human rights, and development. So these institutions provide a framework for states to navigate their relations and tackle global challenges. Peace treaties and military alliances, the UN and NATO. Peace treaties. These are formal agreements to end conflicts, resolve disputes, and establish peace. They often include terms on territory, reparations, disarmament, and human rights protection. Many peace treaties incorporate mechanisms for preventing future disputes, such as territorial demilitarization, conflict resolution mechanisms, or mutual cooperation agreements. So peace treaties are official agreements made to end wars or conflicts. They usually include terms related to territory, reparations, disarmament, and human rights protections. So these treaties often include measures to prevent future conflicts like demilitarized zones, conflict resolution processes, and agreements for ongoing cooperation between the parties involved. So the UN, also known as United Nations, was founded in 1945. The UN promotes global peace and security, human rights, and development. Its Security Council handles conflict resolution, peacekeeping, and sanctions, while the General Assembly serves as a forum for diplomatic discussions. The UN also provides humanitarian aid through various agencies. On the other hand, NATO, or also known as the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, was formed in 1945. NATO is a military alliance focused on collective defense, where an attack on one member is an attack on all. It conducts crisis management, deterrence, and peacekeeping operations. Notable missions include Afghanistan ISAF and Kosovo KFFOR. So UN versus NATO. So let's take a good look on the difference between the two, or the comparison. So the UN is a diplomatic platform focused on global cooperation and legal frameworks, while NATO is a military alliance centered on defense and deterrence. Both work together in peacekeeping, but NATO has more direct military capabilities, while the UN emphasizes diplomacy and humanitarian efforts. So, basically, the UN focuses on global cooperation and diplomacy, while NATO is a military alliance for defense. Both help with peacekeeping, but NATO uses military force and the UN focuses more on diplomacy and aid. So basically, the UN is designed to avoid war in order to maintain peace, while NATO is ready to fight war in order to defend peace. Non-governmental organizations. So, NGOs or non-governmental organizations are independent, non-profit groups that work on social, humanitarian, environmental, or political issues. They provide services like disaster relief, human rights support, healthcare, education, and environmental protection, either globally or locally. And next, the Red Cross. So the Red Cross or Red Crescent in Muslim countries. So this is an example of non-governmental organization. So basically, the Red Cross is an independent charity that helps people in emergencies by providing food, water, and medical aid. It also checks on prisoners of war and helps prevent war crimes. So now, let's move on to the Global Economic Associations, the WTO and NAFTA. The World Trade Organization, or the WTO, is an international economic organization consisting of 162 countries. It was established to promote free trade by reducing tariffs and other trade barriers between member nations, enabling the free exchange of goods and services. However, it faces criticism for favoring large corporations over local workers, as seen in the 1999 Seattle protest. Similarly, NAFTA, or also known as the North American Free Trade Agreement, is an economic treaty between the United States, Canada, and Mexico that allows for the free movement of goods and services between the three countries without imposing tariffs. However, NAFTA has also been criticized, especially by American workers, as it led to the relocation of manufacturing jobs to Mexico, where labor costs are lower. So both organizations highlight the challenges of balancing free trade with protecting local industries.
Globalization and globalism. What is globalization? Globalization is the growing interconnectedness of countries, cultures, and economies through the exchange of goods, services, ideas, and technology. It fosters global cooperation but also raises concerns about inequality and the or erosion of local traditions. What is globalism? Globalism is an ideology that promotes international cooperation to tackle global issues like trade, trade, security, and human rights. It supports interconnectedness, multilateralism, and policies that encourage global governance and shared responsibility among nations. Informationalism is an economic and societal system where digital technologies and information drive growth, shaping economics, industries, and cultures through global connectivity and innovation. Global citizenship. Global citizenship is the idea that individuals have responsibilities beyond their own nations, promoting awareness of global issues, respecting for diversity, and collective action for a challenge like poverty and climate change.